Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to everyone who went back to the room and everyone who's on Zoom and Facebook Live. I'm very happy to be hosting this this fifth panel in our yearly conference. So this panel is on green energy transition in North Africa specifically, and we're going to discuss the possibilities / the limits of green transitions in North Africa. So first, I would like to do a very small presentation. As a reminder, obviously, the English, I'll be moderating in English. Some of our panelists will be speaking in Arabic, others will be speaking in English, and you have access to the translation both on Zoom and in the room. So first, I wanted to give you a very quick presentation about what is the problématique of this panel. So, first, I would like to present some numbers about the North Africa region. So, Morocco has an objective of 52% of renewable energy by 2030. That's what they're aiming for. Algeria has an objective of 27%. Algeria is a bit behind. By 2035. Tunisia has an objective of 30% by 2030, and Egypt an objective of 42% of renewable energies by 2035. Sorry? So these are, you know, good numbers, nice ambitions, but the questions we're asking in this specific panel is, at what cost do these objectives and strategy come? At what cost on inhabitants who lose their lands? At what cost for local populations who lose incomes? Or for local populations who might have green energies but might not be able to access them if they're all aimed for exportation? So during this panel, I will have the pleasure of discussing these issues with our four panelists that I'd like to introduce now. So we're going to start with Rabie Wahba, who is the regional coordinator at International Land Coalition. He has been working in the field of land and housing rights in Egypt for almost 30 years, and today he will speak about the relationship between land and people who live in the land with green energy projects. Second, we will be hearing from Atman Aoui, who is the president of the Association for Mediation in Morocco. Atman has a master's degree in earth science. He is a mediator, and Atman is also a principal of a school. And he will be presenting a specific case of a solar plant in Ouarzazate in Morocco, where there has been conflict over land ownership between the company and the inhabitants. And third, we will be hearing from Aida Delpuech. So Aida is a freelance journalist based in Tunis. She mostly covers and investigates themes related to the environment, agriculture, pollution. And she's currently working with the Arab Reform Initiative along with Heinrich Böll Stiftung in Tunis on a report on green hydrogen in Tunisia and the projects that are led by Germany and the Tunisian government on green hydrogen. So she will very exclusively present her very first findings in this conference before the publication of the report, which will come, I think, next month. And last but not least, we will be hearing from Ilyes Ben Ammar, who is a Tunisian engineer who works at the Tunisian Company for Electricity and Gas, the STEG. And he's also a unionist at l'UGTT. Ilyes is one of the founders of a very interesting working group called the Working Group on Energy Democratization. It's a working group that tries to popularize issues of energy and green energy specifically to make them more available to people and to kind of break with the kind of a tete-a-tete between like European governments and the Tunisian government. And he will be speaking about the work of this working group and what they have been trying to do so far and what is their strategy. So I will let Rabie start.
شكرا صباح الخير. I will speak in Arabic, so please bring your headset. بس تعديل صغير. أنا ما اشتغلتش 30 سنة في مصر على مصر.
Just a small correction. I didn't work for 30 years in Egypt. I have worked in Egypt as a habitat coordinator. Afterwards, I worked in New York, and most of the time I work with the alliance in Egypt. So that's just to make things clear. However, soon we are going to have more members joining, and the alliance is going to start working in Egypt and everywhere else. The International Alliance of the Earth, or the International Land Coalition, is an independent global alliance of civil society and intergovernmental organizations that started in 1995 after an international conference on poverty and starvation, and based on that, and under the sponsorship of IFAD, which is the International Fund for Agricultural Development, we managed to establish this organization. So this is an alliance that stems from the people, to the people, by the people. And it is based on a number of commitments that are reflective of human rights, and they do so, or they reflect the human rights as adopted in international treaties and conventions and as adopted by the government, which means that they are binding to the governments, including farmers and other agricultural systems based on farmers, in addition to equal rights and the rights of women to own land and to manage land, in addition to the inclusive decision making without any kind of exclusion for the indigenous populations, in addition to activism, advocacy. We have 10 commitments which have a lot of details, of course, and if you need to know more about that and how we comprise all these commitments in all our efforts, whether in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa, and lately in the Middle East. Of course, we rely on the organizations that work with the people or directly represent the people. We are not one of those organizations that only offer consultation or write reports about that community. There must be people, real people who are there, and we represent them. Therefore, we represent the organizations that represent people, not only that work with people. And this is the main vein here, or this is the main axis of our alliance that extends across the world. It is represented in 302 organizations that are direct representatives of the people. Lately, we can add to that also other organizations from Europe, like, for example, Montenegro and Netherlands and so on. However, the issue of land in Europe is a bit different because it's more related to the management of the locals of the land and of the acquisitions or the plots. Since 2017, we started working as an alliance in the MENA region to support land rights and to draft strategies between stakeholders that confirm and assert the land rights in a way that is comprehensive, integrative of everything. The main important thing in our alliance is that we have important players, for example, such as IFAD, the World Bank, and other international players who are quite effective and influential in human rights and land rights and so on. The structure of our alliance, first of all, we have an administration represented by a board, an elected board. Lately, we drafted a strategy for 8 years that also aims at achieving people-centered land governance. Our administrative structure has a secretariat, has a different members and has different smaller sub-centers in Rome and in other cases. We organize regional forums every year and the international forum every few years. Our last or the most recent event was in Jordan last week, and it was international. However, it had invited many Jordanian and Palestinian partners. It also hosted international partners, including associations, organizations, UN agencies, and donors. And for the first time in this so in Jordan, the Jordan Forum was the 9th forum. The one before was in Indonesia, and it was the first time that we have a GLF youth, where we had a global forum for the youth, and we concluded it with a declaration that represents the position of its members on different topics. So as we said, we had 2 declarations, one for the youth and one for the land, and you can read them through the hyperlink that you have here. The alliance has different strategic partners, including the European Union and other organizations. When we're talking about energy and we want to talk about energy from the prospect of land, this is not new. However, it is new to the alliance in North Africa because, as we said, as a platform, we are still the newest in this alliance. Since 2017, we started addressing this region. This region, which is the MENA region, we have different members in Palestine, and we have other ones in North Africa, like, for example, the Azul Association that works with the Amazigh population, and through other organizations and friends in North Africa, we would like to strengthen our ties and our partnerships with the civil society. When we're talking about the energy, we should also tackle fossil fuel and renewable energy. Of course, there are many experiences that are quite frustrating when it comes to providing power to most of the people in North Africa. It is not easy, it has different consequences, and it requires financial resources. Even renewable energy projects, it leaves different consequences on the locals. So when we're trying to fill the energy gap, we will notice that this gap is going to remain. We're always going to have a gap between the energy provision and the energy consumption or demand. The load that the energy load that the people carry is mainly symbolized by the financial aspect, but the cost aspect. It happened in Egypt, and that meant that Egypt had to deal with structural reform and structural adaptation programs by the International Monetary Fund. And we all know that as long as we will need power, we will have to take out loans in the whole region, but especially in North Africa. And the more we try to exploit natural resources like the land, because most of the projects that were carried out and other expected projects rely on seizing plots of land from local communities. So as an alliance and through our popular base, we try to focus on the guidelines of land governance, which you can also find in within the publications of the FAO, and which constitutes now the main reference for dealing with the different threats. We're talking about different communities. We're talking about pastoral communities, which represent a great community or large community in North Africa. And whether we're talking about Morocco or Egypt, we are trying to put these communities at the center of the decision-making process through consultations. And we always talk about that, me and Aida, especially the case of As-Saleh, where there was this wind power plant that was going to be established in a certain village, the village As-Saleh, and that has led to serious confrontation. There is another project that is being negotiated, and it was already negotiated in April. It is a huge project that involves more than 100 companies, and it is directly related to renewable energy. So if we do not recognize and we do not if we do not respect these rights, so we are going to have victims. So whenever we do that, we need to carefully study our policies. We need to have transparency, to have correct data in order to save the populations or communities from the harm. It also includes, or that matter also involves women's rights, because we all know that women bear the brunt of development mostly. And as we know, this is going to affect women in everything related to land ownership and management. So therefore, we need to pressure the governments in order to make land accessible to women even more than now. without any discrimination, of course. These projects also lead to expropriation and to a forced exile or exodus or evacuation of the locals. In many cases, the reparations are not enough or the compensation is not enough. And this is what we try to monitor when we're dealing with any development project. We should always take into consideration the treatment of the locals. So this is a quick overview for the renewable energy project, and if we implement it in North Africa, we may be working more on changing policies and taking to consider or putting the locals or local communities at the center of our projects. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rabie. This was a very interesting presentation. What I took out of it is the need to democratize decision making is at the heart of a fair and just energy transition. Now we will be listening to Atman Aoui, who will talk about a process of, I guess, a non-democratic process of decision making, talking about what is that.
شكرا. Je peux me mettre debout. نقف. لأن الآن أوقف. لأن المعلم دائما يحب أن يكون بجانب.
Okay, I will be standing here because the teacher always likes to be standing next to the board. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for your generous invitation. And I am quite honored to be representing Morocco in this conference. My name is Professor Atman Aoui, and I am presenting to you Morocco's experience in energy transition. So this first picture reflects what everybody has tackled before, which is the up-down approach, or the approach from top to bottom.
Next.
And this is a project for renewable energy. So even though Morocco has made this transition from non-renewable energy to renewable energy, still fuel is the most used source of energy in Morocco. So far in Morocco, there is 111 projects for renewable energy that are either underway or being developed. Morocco is strongly pacing towards an affordable, trustworthy, sustainable, and modern energy, because and it is also working on providing more energy from wind power, because Morocco is constituted of 3,500 kilometers of shores and shores. So the strategy of Morocco, it is to reach 52% of renewable energy by 2030. The solar energy, the Morocco had laid out a plan in 29 that aims at reaching 2,000 megawatt per hour in 2020. The most important project was the Noor of Warzazat that was going to be implemented on 4 phases, 580 megawatt. The second most important one is Noor Midlet, 800 megawatt on 2 phases. However, it is on hold because of the pandemic. We have Noor Al Uyun, which is the light of Uyun, 85 megawatt CFV or CFV, the lights or the Noor of Bujdur, 20 megawatt CFV, and a hybrid project between solar power and gas power in Bani Mathar and Tarfaya and Famulwad. So there was a report that showed that Morocco is still at the top of the list along with China, or was in 2018, related in everything related to electrical investments based on CSP, concentrated solar power, and the fourth on the international level in generating this power, according to a 2019 report. Hydropower or hydroelectric power. Morocco has started establishing hydropower projects in 1934, 26 megawatt. A big number of dams do produce hydroelectric power, and the ambition is to reach 100 megawatts per hour by 2030. Now we are going to tell you about our stance. We are not against, but rather we do approve of energy transition, and we want all the projects that to work and to succeed, because they are going to rebalance or to achieve a rebalance, environmental rebalance, and it's going to limit poisonous gas emissions. We stand with all the structural projects that are going to be beneficial to the government and to the populations, and with anyone who defends the dignity of humans. However, we need to ask here, how do these projects benefit the locals? How did they change their economic situation? And why many alternative energy projects were located in fragile places or regions that have already been overexploited with the mineral exploitation? And did we overcome the waste of mineral exploitation in order to start exploiting the power of wind and the sun? And why aren't these projects distributed on different cities? Because most of these projects are in the rural areas. I am going to also pose some questions for discussion. Are really and truly solar power projects environmentally friendly? Are we really in that comfortable position where we are heating power in order to produce energy, and in places that are threatened with droughts? Why didn't we limit ourselves to photovoltaic technology? Are there any Why didn't we do that? Why didn't we use the photovoltaic technology to heat the water? Are there any other programs to use solar energy in pumping irrigation water? Because pumping is free and it usually depletes the water beds. And what is the fate of the waste that is going to be produced in the future by the wind and solar energy projects? When we're talking about the batteries, for example, that are going to be depleted, how are they going to use it before, or how are they going to dispense of it? Who are the persons harmed from that? First of all, the locals, because they are going to lose many hectares of their lands, and they are going to suffer from difficulties, or rather they are going to lose a lot of its value, because it is going to be valued at less than $1,000 for a hectare per project. Also, the Bedouin tracks are going to be lost, because usually the tracks. Okay, so the losing the Bedouin tracks because these projects are going to be established on wide spaces and they are usually used by the Bedouins, and when they lose that they are going to suffer a lot, especially the biggest project now. It is being established on a location where the Bedouins used to settle down. It is also going to affect the fauna and flora, and these glass panels are going to affect it. They are going to leave a great impact on the water beds because the water is pumped from the dam, and we are talking about a desert area. So where are we going to find the water for it? As for community dynamics, you are going to find that there is quite a weird problematic because usually when we have a project, the housing and rent prices rise during the project, and with that is with the increase in the number of workers. And after the end of the works, the rent remains and at its former level, despite the absence of the customers or the workers. The idea of marriage with the foreigners spread during the period of the project, and the number of women coming to the region increased. These women stayed in the region, and after the end of the project, it became clear that the number of married women was uh, uh, was uh, there was only a few married women, and the other women of the region who settled in order to get married was increasing. Civilian dynamics were negatively affected as these areas experienced a dynamic that would have been proposing that would have been quite a relevant force or an important force for building and implementing effective public policies that responds to the aspirations of the citizens.
Eventually will be to encourage investments to find other structural solutions, other projects such as the ones implemented in other coastal cities, so that we do not end on a pessimistic note. Of course, we support all the projects that will be using clean energy or sustainable energy, but no energy transition can happen, no just energy can happen if we exclude the local populations, and if we do not have environmental assessment strategies, and if we do not have a good assessment of the alternatives. So we cannot start with a project and after that find the solutions. We need to have an assessment to define the alternatives before even starting to implement the project. We cannot talk about a just transition without the approval of the citizens, and if citizens do not directly benefit from the wealth. There might be many income or wealth generating projects, but these projects need to benefit the local communities and citizens. We cannot talk about a just transition if we don't have sustainable projects. So if we have water consuming projects and we do not have an alternative to limit the over exploitation of water resources. We cannot rely on pumping techniques using solar energies solar energy if we do not have alternative solutions for citizens, for farmers, for them to have enough water for their crops. So it is very important instead of pumping systematically all day arbitrarily, it is very important not to do that, but to have an assessment of the project, to have clear irrigation plans for the farmers, and we need to limit the overconsumption of water, since sometimes people that do not pay for the water do not know the value of it and use it without thinking of their uses. You can see here Zagora, a desertic region. This is where watermelon is produced. We export watermelon to Europe. I can tell you that the watermelon we ate here in the hotel is definitely coming from that region in Morocco. General recommendations. We shouldn't implement projects that do not generate revenues and income for the local communities. We need income generating projects for the local communities. We need to stress on equality and justice in the use of lands. Before talking about any transition, it is very important for all the transitions to be just in order to be able to talk about a just energy transition. Transition should happen at all levels in all sectors, not only in the energy sector. The energy sector cannot be isolated from the other sectors. We need a transition in all sectors in parallel, a just transition everywhere. We need to review, re-examine the legal frameworks. We need as well to facilitate the use of alternative energy by citizens, and we should be able to sell this energy through national networks. We should be able to rely as well on legal frameworks that are specific to rural areas for them to be able to benefit from their natural resources, the water, the sun and everything. This just energy transition should happen in all Middle Eastern and the North African regions. We should have a strong cooperation in the region. We cannot stress on one region as a silo that is isolated from other regions. We need to impose taxes on pollution, so polluters have to pay, and we should be able to support the projects that are eco-friendly. All regions that pollute should pay taxes, and this should be applied to everyone that pollutes and should be redistributed to eco-friendly regions. We should be able as well to overcome different regional conflicts and benefit from the ability to cooperate in order to implement better projects, mainly in Northern Africa. We should be able as well to work in the networks in order to work better on advocacy, on activism, and this serves the best interest of the entire planet. We have many similar examples of working together, but I will not delve into further details because of the lack of time. Thank you.
Thank you. It is a very interesting presentation. What I'm keeping from it definitely is this idea that we like already existing inequalities in Morocco, say le Maroc utile, le Maroc inutile, should not be reproduced when we transition towards new energies. And your presentation also asks a very important question that I hope we will be able to deal with in the Q&A session, which is expertise and exchange of expertise between countries from the South. Such as like this conference, for instance, but I think it's a very important idea, and I think Ilyes will discuss it. This idea that we cannot just count on like northern expertise to come and not take anything out like ourselves and not develop our own expertise. So before I give the floor to Aida, I'd like to remind everyone on Zoom and Facebook that they can ask us questions, ask the panelists questions online. Just write them down, and I'll receive them on my phone. So now I'm going to give the floor to Aida, who will be talking about green hydrogen and in Tunisia. Thank you.
مرحبا، سامحني أنا باش نحكي بالإنجليزي. It's easier for me. So I'm very glad Atman talked about the Moroccan case before I give some insights about what is going on in Tunisia. Because throughout my work, I look very closely at what is going on in Morocco, at what has been going on, and in order to have an idea of the mistakes that shouldn't be repeated in Tunisia. Because Morocco is much more forward in its energy transition than Tunisia is. Tunisia has only, for the moment, 3% of its energy production that relies on renewable energy. So it's currently very small. But we are, well, I mean, the country is now entering into a new phase of its energy transition. There is a clear aim to accelerate the energy transition in Tunisia, following its international commitments. But the problem is that no debate has occurred at the national level on how, I mean, on the redistributive aspect of the energy transition in Tunisia. So I've been working since a year and a half on documenting this energy transition from the ground. I've been visiting communities that have hosted, on which lands have been implemented some renewable energy projects. And I will start by introducing them, and then I will let Ilyes give a more broader explanation about the whole Tunisian context. And as Malek said, I will then introduce to you my work on the green hydrogen implementation in Tunisia. So, next slide, thank you. I would first like to talk to you about a very emblematic case in Tunisia, which is the one of Bouj el-Salhi. Bouj el-Salhi is a very small village at the northern tip of Tunisia. And in 2000, during the Ben Ali's regime, the first wind power plant has been implemented in this village of nearly 100 inhabitants. Most of them, if not all of them, are farmers and fishermen. And so this project has been, bringing a lot of concerns and problems in the village. And the inhabitants have been fighting for more than 10 years in order to, fighting back for their rights, but also their land. Because what has happened in Bouj el-Salhi is that in order to implement the wind power plant, the state has grabbed the land, which was an agricultural land on which the livelihoods of the village relied on. In order to build this very first wind plant in Tunisia, without any big compensation, let's say any compensation. And the project has also brought various nuisances. The wind turbines have been built very close to the houses. There has been also some environmental consequences on the migratory birds, on the health on the inhabitants. And the big paradox in Bouj el-Salhi is that even though electricity is produced few meters away from the inhabitants' houses, they do not at all benefit from this. And on the contrary, because they have been fighting against the Tunisian electricity company for years now, they often see their electricity power is cut. And so this is a huge paradox in Bouj el-Salhi. And what is happening there, and is still happening there, is really has really become a study case of what shouldn't be reproduced in Tunisia for the coming projects that aim to be implemented by 2022. Yeah. Next slide, please. So the second case I wanted to tell you about is a very much undocumented case. It concerns Tozer, which is Tunisia's biggest oasis. And the oasis has been confronted to major water problems these past few years. The farmers told me that it has been really, the problems have been increasing since 4 to 5 years, related to climate change, but also a huge water mismanagement. So what happens in Tozer is that in order to have the water necessary to the production of dates, farmers need to dig and pump deeper and deeper into the ground in order to get their water. And this costs a lot. I mean, this requires a lot of electricity. So their bills are very important. And they are currently facing a big problem because they are not able to pay their electricity bills to the Tunisian electricity company. And today, their bill is of 17 million dinars, so which equals to $6 million, which is huge for farmers that. La million, yes. It's huge. Yes, and one of the other aspects of the story is that this year, because of climate change and also other reasons, 40% of the farmers of Tozer haven't been able to sell their dates. So they are indebted. And Tozer has hosted the first public solar plant that was inaugurated in March. And so the oasis is also facing a very big paradox, because while electricity is produced a few kilometers away from these farmers' crops, they do not benefit at all from it. And so the project has, in their opinion, and in my opinion too, completely missed the point and the stakes of this area. So these two projects, I mean, I wanted to introduce them to you in order for you to have an idea of the paradoxes that we face in Tunisia. And I will let Ilyes talk more about the broad context and about the work that he has been doing with communities. Yeah, so in this context, we can change the slide. Thank you. Yes. So, in this context, Tunisia is currently aiming to accelerate its energy transition. And so, hand in hand with Occidental countries, specifically the EU. So I've been working for ARI and HBS on a particular aspect of the energy transition in Tunisia, the coming energy transition, concerning the implementation of green hydrogen. It is something that we hear of more and more, that is becoming more and more present in the conversation around energy transition. And Tunisia is among the countries that seek to develop the production of green hydrogen in the coming years. So I've been trying to understand a bit of the context of this green hydrogen development, because we know very little about it in Tunisia. There is very few data and information disclosed. So I could meet with a lot of institutional representatives and stakeholders, which allowed me to understand what is actually going on. And the main questions that I have asked myself during this research is, from who has this idea come from? Who will benefit from the development of green hydrogen in Tunisia? So towards who is it directed? And is green hydrogen really a green solution and a wishable solution? So to have a bit of context, and I'm sure you all know about it, but the EU is currently trying to turn away from the Russian gas. And so, I mean, this has been going on for quite some years now. But with the current invasion in Ukraine, European countries have tried to accelerate this transition. 2 weeks ago, they have published a new plan called Repower EU. So in this plan, we can see that EU's ambitions concerning the production of green hydrogen have doubled, and that the aim of importing green hydrogen from other countries to Europe has also doubled. At first, North Africa and Ukraine were targeted by the European countries to produce part of this actually of this green hydrogen. Now Ukraine is out of the game, so much pressure will be put on North Africa for this new energy production. So this will not be without, I mean, this will for sure have massive consequences on North African countries, and mostly human, but also environmental consequences. So what I've understood through my research is that when we talk about green hydrogen project, we talk about huge mega projects. It's not the small ones that we have been seeing in Tunisia, the one of Tozer, the one of Bouj Salhi, of 20 megawatts or so. We are talking about gigawatts. And so talking about this these mega projects, we are talking also about huge surfaces, land surfaces that will be used for the production of this new source of energy. To give you an example, I have met with a German expert working on green hydrogen, and he gave me a number that struck me. In order to fuel and power a flight from Tunis to Frankfurt with green hydrogen, they will need, well, a production of 1 gigawatt will be needed to power this flight. And 1 gigawatt would mean to implement solar panels on the whole surface of the Gabon region, which is, well, a northern, well, this region, like on the east side. It's huge. It's huge. So this is basically what the EU and specifically Germany, because it is Germany that is pushing a lot for alternatives to Russian gas and also for green hydrogen in the world. So in Tunisia specifically, Germany is leading with the Ministry of the Energy. Germany is leading the green hydrogen project. So maybe the green hydrogen technology will evolve until its application in 2030. But until then, it will ask for, you know, this kind of surface in order to be efficient and less costly. So we have a major land issue, as Rabie has been talking about. I mean, land issue is key and is at the heart of the green energy transition. And so another main problem that I have identified concerning green hydrogen implementation in Tunisia is the aim to export most of its production to Europe. Talking with the with the stakeholders, they are aiming to export 90% of the green hydrogen production to Europe. The 10% that will remain in Tunisia will be directed towards the industry, and not any industry, towards the Tunisian chemical group in Gebis, of which you have most surely heard of, and that has been a very polluting industry. So, you know, implementing green projects in order to fuel some very polluting projects. And a third aspect that I wanted also to raise, and then I'm done, is the fact that the development of green hydrogen in Tunisia also risks to slow down the country's energy transition, because the new renewable plants that will be implemented will most probably be in competition with those who could serve for the country's energetic transition. Yeah, time out.
Thank you, Aida. This was great. Okay, so without due interruption, I will pass the floor to Ilyes, who is on the opposite side, so who works for the electricity and gas company in Tunisia, and who will present a bit what he and his fellow colleagues and unionists have been doing so far. So.
صباح الخير مرحبا بكل الحضور.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Allow me first to thank Ari for this invitation. I am extremely happy to attend these panels. I've benefited a lot from Atman, from Aida, from all the colleagues, from Rabie. I've benefited a lot as well from the Moroccan experience. I have noticed that in Tunisia, we should be proactive, learn from their experience and implement better projects. Thank you, Aida. Thank you a lot for your intervention. I hope that you'll be able to work together in the future. I will be talking about Tunisia in general. Tunisia as an example or as a model of the problematics that you are talking about while talking about the transition, this energy transition. In North Africa, there is a mainstream discourse, a one-way mainstream discourse. So as if we should clap for any renewable energy project, but we should be aware of that. So not every renewable energy project is a good project. We should examine closely every project. Unionists, trade unions were the first to have a critical approach regarding these projects. So why renewable energies in Tunisia? Why are we talking about renewable energies in Tunisia today? Some might talk about the pressure, about the COP, but in Tunisia, there are two main factors. First, we're suffering from a structural deficit in fuel, and exactly like Morocco, like other countries, like other Arab countries, we should be able to fill this gap to find a solution to that. Another thing, another factor, Tunisia has a very has a very wealthy, if you could say so, resources, and we have many opportunities to work on renewable energies. You can see here the opportunity of producing 5 gigawatts of energy, while if we compare that to the solar energy, and of course there are many agencies, Spanish agencies and many other European agencies that have conducted many researches and studies in the field. Around 280 gigawatts can be produced, and 10 for the solar wind. That is onshore, not offshore. So we're still examining what the offshore what the offshore projects hold for Tunisia. So this is the capacity, the distribution of power generation capacity, only around 5% of renewable energies. Any project, any discourse emanates from that. We have a deficit in this field. We don't rely much on renewable energy. You can see the figures here on the chart. Yes, there might have been some manipulation in the figures and the mainstream discourse. Around the world, regarding the generation, energy generation, 26% around the world of energy is generated from solar energy or from renewable energy. 15% of this is water generated energy. In comparison, in Tunisia, we only have 5% of renewable energy. However, we should know that 15% of the renewable energy across the world are related to water resources. And we should be aware of these figures, and we should examine closely these figures and not be drawn towards the mainstream discourse that we're hearing more and more. So now we're witnessing a development in this field between 2010 and 2019. We have witnessed an increase in the combined cycle, more gas turbines, but ever since 2013, we had a constant figure in the energy produced by the renewable sources. You can see here the reality of electricity that is produced from renewable energy in Tunisia. So this is how electricity generation evolved.
موجودين توا زوز محطات من الهيكل العمومي اللي هو شركه توصيل الكهرباء والغاز. واحده بدايه التشغيل بدات سنه 2000 اللي هي سيدي داود، واللي تعاملت على 3 مراحل. اخر مرحله 2000 2003 2006. 2006 برج صالحي، وسنتحدث عن برج الصالحي. وفي 2013 في بنزرت 190 ميجا وات. هذا مشروع عملوا الهيكل العمومي، وهو آخر المشاريع للطاقات المتجددة من قبل الهيكل العمومي. ولكن اليوم في تونس هناك اللي بعدها مشاريع مبرمجة على مدى الفترة من 2020 من 2016 ل 2030 اللي هنا خذينا
We have program projects, and up until 2020 or from 2020 up until 2025, it is supposed to be providing 1,000 megawatts. So what does that mean? That means that the great capacity is given. So the wind farms which have a great capacity are given to foreign companies, while the small ones with the small capacity are given to the locals who need the permits and who need a lot of documents. As for the legal system in Tunisia, no, not the microphone. We don't have power anymore.
C'est bon?
نعود للإطار التشريعي اللي يهم الطاقات المتجددة في
Go
تونس.
back to the legal framework related to renewable energy in Tunisia. When it comes to the renewable energy, especially in Tunis, it all started after the uprising. The 2009 law concerning self-generation for companies and local authorities was implemented, and it allowed for all the companies who that would like to work in renewable energy. So it was now legal to do that. The other one related to the production of electricity from renewable energy. It started in 2015, and in 2013 and 2014, they had a conference that was dedicated to the use of electricity generated from renewable energy. However, the main laws were enacted in order to respond to foreign investors. So we were trying as much as possible to explain everything. The 2019 law is a revised version of the 2015 law. And what was amended was first that there was an alternative or a parallel market for electricity, and that led to the following. It was the first time since the French colonization of Tunisia. It was the first time that in 2019, private companies were allowed to produce electricity and sell it to other private companies. So that was a first in Tunisia. The other thing that you need to know was that it allowed the companies to establish renewable energy projects on farming lands without changing the qualification or the description on it. Because in Tunisia, when you classify land as farming land, you are not allowed to do anything at all with it except agriculture. So the new aspect was that you could establish a renewable energy project on such lands without going through the red tape and the bureaucracy. So there were, of course, reservations expressed on that. One of them was from the American company, and they have communicated with the premiership, and based on the reservations of the American company, the 2019 law was enacted as a revised version of the 2015. What about the impacts of the renewable energy projects on electricity as a public service? First of all, was that the nationalization of electricity and gas. So the same nationalization of energy of electricity, the same nationalization that took place in France, it happened in Tunisia, and now the power plants, or actually the power plants were owned by the government. And there is a militant martyr who is Sultani. He said that what relates us or what links us to the Tunisian state is the only two things. The first one is the ID that we have, which is Tunisian, and the other one is the electricity it provides. So those of you who are who have a technical background, you will understand that when we're talking about renewable energy, there are many challenges. First of all, intermittent, which means that whenever we are producing energy from renewable sources, it is intermittent, it is not sustained, it is not continuous, because you may have wind in order to produce wind power, or you may not have wind. We may have sun in order to do to recharge the solar power, or we may not have that. Therefore, it is intermittent. It is not something that we can rely on all the time. So in Tunisia, we have this ambition to have the smart grid as the main controller of the whole network, even though in Europe this is not achievable and this was not achieved before. However, but that is not possible, and that means that the different challenges that we've already talked about may not allow renewable energy to enter the network in the first place. Also, the public structure, it means that the electrical company needs to take out loans with interest, of course, on them in order to establish such projects, and in order to buy the energy from private companies, which means that this is pure loss. As for water pumping stations, we all know that hydroelectrical power is produced by a waterfall that is usually higher than the turbines, and it is usually placed at the top of the dams. I don't know if the information is clear for you, but this kind of process will need a lot of time. So basically, we are overwhelming the public structure. If they would, now their aim is to export renewable energy, however, especially to Europe. However, we don't have a connection between Tunisia and Italy, for example, and this is what the government should do. They need to invest in this kind of linkages and connections. Additionally, it is going to burden the government and the public structure with more loans, and this means that we are going to need more financing from different parties, and these different parties may affect, and these parties may deny the public power plant or the public power company from financing because of their own whims, or at their own whims. Also, the private electrical companies are going to produce electricity and power, and they're going to do that through investment in gas turbines. However, the gas turbines are left to the government to work on, and the renewable energy is going to be left to the private sector to work on. Now, if we want to take an example, which is Burj al-Salihi, I will tell you that this example is a crime in itself. It is a state crime. We have a lot of questions on Zoom, so if you could please be brief. Yes, I have 2 slides and I'm going to be as quick as possible. So our association is formed of unionists, of specialists that want to take this dialogue from the whole of the unions and take it out to the public. We faced many challenges. We went to Sidi Bouzid and we talked to the small scale farmers, because in Tunisia we have a huge problem, which is the small scale farmers actually steal electricity or steal the power from the government, because they are not given licenses from the Ministry of Agriculture. And if they want to irrigate their lands, they will need to pump out the water, and they need to pump it out using the electricity. This is why they basically steal the power or the electrical power. And so we have many examples to show you, and one of them is a region where a French company was working on establishing a renewable energy plant or a project, but it left many dire consequences, and the end was a failed project.
So thank you, Ilyes. So now we're gonna pass to the questions. I have already a few questions that came to us on Zoom. I'll just read them out loud. So we have a question for Atman. The question is, was the environmental impact assessment for the Ouarzazate power plant made public before the construction began? Or yeah, and we also have another question by Nasreen Wannes, which asks, have any initial deals agreements already have been done with the US regarding green hydrogen in Tunisia or in other North African region, or is it still in negotiation? So I think yeah, we have another question to Ilyes. Can STEC be ما يخدمش به هل ستيك تنجم معناتها لي ريفورمي بطريقه اللي تعاون الانرجي ترانزيشن اما بلاش خصخصه.
So another question regarding any kinds of reforms that could be done in a way that could assist energy transition without privatization. So another question, what about the community responsibility or social responsibility of the Tunisian company for electricity and gas? إذن سوف
شكرا على تدخلات كلها مثمرة.
Thank you so much for the interventions. They are all very enriching, especially that I didn't know a lot about power, and Ilyes has given me a great introduction when we were coming over here. So my question, Rabie, how can Alliance for Land help the indigenous populations or local communities? Because if we can connect between the different interventions, we will find that Warzazat, for example, was a great example of land seizure. So, and that led the people to struggle to own back their land. Also, the same in Burj al-Salhi. I didn't also understand the consent, the prior consent, the prior and informed consent. It is not there, not in the literature, not in the narrative, not in anything, which means that the task force for democracy of power or the working group for energy democracy is raising awareness about that, because when the government was working in Burj al-Salhi, they didn't explain anything to the people. They just came to the lands in order to evict its people and its community. So how could the local communities fight these kind of practices? Would you allow me another observation? A small commentary on laws related to renewable energy. We will go back to the matter of indictment and the relationship with international organization. And I had given an example at the Tunisian parliament, and I had a different intervention on the legal aspects of investment, and we were explaining this law related to the appropriation of the foreigners of land. It was going hand in hand with the privatization of the power sector. It is and with the privatization of other fields and other sectors in the state. And we know that there is a main report regarding that was manipulated. Is there any other country you can use as an example for the link between the bad impacts of renewable energy and the debts and the donors? شكرا جزيلا.
I am happy that you opened the subject of solar energy because it's very critical subject, especially also in Yemen. But before my question, I would like to raise my this concerns in our country. Before the war, there was no solar pumps in Yemen. The market was not there at all. But because of the war and the lack of diesel, lack of electricity, the market started to be built up in Yemen, and it's huge market. And maybe one of the positive things of the war in the beginning, the groundwater started to be stabilized because there is no high pumping because of the lack of diesel and electricity. But with the new technology of solar pumps, it started now to work extensively, and there is now a lot of concerns, especially from the Ministry of Water and Environment. And we have made a study, and now we are currently in the process of publishing new scientific article with Helen Lakhal and also Dr. Mohammed in the same subject. But my question for our colleagues from Morocco and Tunis, is there any detailed study? Because I know there was subsidies for solar pumps in Morocco, which then stopped because of the same concerns of the abstraction of groundwater. Is there any detailed study about this impact? To what extent the solar pumps affected groundwater levels? Thank you so much.
Now it's Ali's turn, and then it's gonna be Omar.
اوكي شكرا. معك علي أزناق من المغرب. فقط حبيت نطرح.
Thank you, Ali Aznag from Morocco. I just wanted to tell you about a few ideas about solar panels and the solar energy in Morocco. I just wanted to say that Morocco doesn't own only one solar energy plant, but we have many others in Ouarzazate and so on, and in Sidi Ayad. So these are neoliberal projects that were established a while ago, financed by the World Bank, the European Investment Banks, and the African Investment Bank. And the number or the sum of all the debts taken out by Morocco from these different donors reaches $9 billion. However, when we see that, how can we talk about energy sovereignty when we see that all of these international organizations are that infiltrated that way? Also, you know very well that in CD Wardat there is a lot of suffering for small-scale farmers and other villagers. We know that in 2018, a crisis of lack of water, or the thirsty crisis as called, the thirst uprising took place, and as we all know that also in many cases the solar panels need to be washed, and this water and the turbines also need to be washed, and when this water used to wash the solar panels and the turbines, it infiltrates the groundwater also, and bringing with it all the toxins and so on. So additionally, I'm going to talk about the cost of the land, because the lands were bought unfairly in a way that raises a lot of questions, because it was bought at a very cheap cost, only $1 or so on for the kilometer. Also related to the pastures of Sidi Ayad, or the shepherds over there, the shepherds protested against international companies who have fenced these areas and controlled these areas. So they acquired them, and they started their projects on the lands of the farmers who were protesting all the time without any regard to their needs. So how can we talk about a just transition when we can see all these information in front of us?
شكرا على المداخلات القيمة عمر من فلسطين. السؤال هو مفتوح للجميع. أحيانا الأزمة هي بتخلق
Hello, I'm Ammar from Palestine. As we say, crises are the main generators sometimes of opportunities or alternative opportunities and solutions. Based on your experience, do you have examples of energy production networks, renewable networks that are alternative solutions that might be in the private sector, in the local communities, not necessarily by the state, in the region, in the country? Nadir, thank you. I have two questions. One question for Atman. As a mediator, the local community have demands in these projects. What are these demands? Employment opportunities, benefit from the energy resources? Another question, we have talked a lot today about the mega projects. We've talked about large-scale projects, very large-scale projects. However, we used to hear a lot about solar energy as being a decentralized option that can be adopted in rural areas on a small scale, perhaps a democratic energy, if you could say so. So whether inside municipalities and some communities, are there any small scale experiences that can be given as an example here? The idea here is, what are the solutions? What are the alternatives to work on the transition, to use the energy we have while having a democratic energy, between two brackets. With local communities having ownership of these projects. Are there financing examples as well of similar projects or not? So
the same order that we started.
let's respect the same order.
Just gonna add my own question, if you don't mind, which is something I already mentioned, which is what kind of cooperation, South-South cooperation, can we imagine when we talk about green energy transition? So should we think more regionally? Should each country have its own strategy? What for you would be a regional solution? So thank you. We're going to start with Atman, and then, sorry, Rabia, Asfa. Rabia, and then Atman, and then Aida, and Ilyes. And I will be just one round of questions because we're already late for lunch.
شكرا جزيلا على السؤال اللي بيفتح مزيد من الفرص.
Thank you for this mind-opening question, or these mind-opening questions. We are working through different mechanisms. We have more than one platform in the coalition. The majority of these platforms, they rely on technical expertise. We develop strategies for the stakeholders, for the relevant people. We have national engagement strategies for relevant entities. We start with an assessment report about the lands, about the local communities that might be affected by the project or by certain projects or policies in general. We gather all stakeholders together to design a strategy. We invest as much as possible in empowering local community members through local organizations, through negotiations with governments, through negotiations with IFIs or with financial institutions in general. We invest in our relationship with the World Bank, with the FAO, with the IFADs, and with other entities and agencies that have a certain control over policy making and policy designing, mainly in terms of strategy. And this is included in the national strategy that can be a 5-year strategy. And in the framework of the strategy, we might talk as well about the main problems and solutions related to the land. There is a coalition as well inside the majority of countries in which the coalition is operational. So based on our work in 2019 and based on the World Forum that was held, we were able to support local community members. We were able to mobilize efforts of people. We've organized advocacy campaigns against the companies that might be exploiting the rights of community members. We take advantage, of course, of the local expertise, of the technologies available in the advocacy campaigns. Regarding the work on the regional level and the sharing of experiences, South-South sharing of experience. This is very important. This helps us acquire the technological and the technical resources needed. This helps us build on the resources that we have in the region. And this helps, in addition to that, to face some political trends or projects that might exploit the lands of people or people's rights, social rights, cultural rights, political rights of landowners. So we work closely with the civil society organizations in the South to face these multinationals or these big companies. Atman? Thank you. Regarding the questions that were directly addressed to me. So whether we had an assessment an environmental impact assessment before the construction began regarding the projects that are funded by international banks, mainly environmental projects here. In this case, we have to prepare environmental assessment impact projects and there are regulations that we should follow in order to follow up closely on the complaints of people. But who is conducting these assessments? Are these assessments credible? Are these transparent? How are they reaching the citizens? This is the problematic. How can we? How are the results of these assessments shared? Have they been shared or not? So there are many questions raised around that. In the future, there should be an impartial third party that can make these assessments, but for the exploiting company or for the persons benefiting from the project to conduct this assessment, I don't know how impartial that is, how objective that is. Mining companies, for example, used to do this environmental impact assessment or to assess the impact on society before their projects, but the experience with them wasn't that successful. Regarding financing, as Ali said, these projects are designed around very heavy loans. Regarding Node 1, Node 2, Node 3 projects, these have been finalized in Ouarzazate. These projects have been finalized, so 4 projects have been finalized, and now a fence was built as well in order to start with the project. In the other region, the persons or the people that are impacted by these projects, yes, there are people impacted by the projects, and the region now is suffering from drought because of the water that is being pumped. The water is not only used to clean the panels, but the real problem is the energy used for the turbines. These require a large quantity of water, and this is why there is a water problem. Regarding land acquisition or land grabbing, when we ask the state about that, they would present documents that justify the land grabbing. And we know how the lands are being exploited. We know how people are being pressured, and in certain times members of the parliament are being pressured to sign certain documents related to the lands. If we examine closely that, we notice that people in general are not okay with the way their lands are being acquired. However, signatures are being obtained in ways that we all know on the official documents. Regarding the demands, I've visited Sidi Ayyad recently in the framework of the research project I was doing on the people that were affected by the project. The Bedouins mainly are the ones that have been affected because the land was fenced. I can say that the requirements are basic and very objective. People should be able to benefit from job opportunities, infrastructure, and energy. Now, the Bedouins are affected, and what they want is a model village, if I could say so, a dispensary, decent living spaces. We cannot oblige them to leave their lands without presenting them with alternatives. The kind of cooperation between countries, I'm not an expert in the field, but I can say that some countries should be able to benefit from other countries' experiences, mainly those who have already worked in this field. We should be able to learn from each other's mistakes as well, or else these countries will always be the victims of the loans they would have to contract in the future.
So I will answer very quickly to the question that has been asked on the US's deals with concerning green hydrogen. So I have to admit I don't know a lot about the US strategy concerning green hydrogen. What is sure is that they want to get on the market. But they are less under pressure compared to Germany or other European countries that really seek to turn away from the Russian gas. So, as I've said, this explains a lot of why Germany has been opening and doing many agreements with neighboring countries such as Morocco. So not only Tunisia, but Morocco was first. Also the UAE, Egypt, South Africa. So yeah, they are really expanding their deals. And I also wanted to answer the question concerning solar pumps, which is a very, very important question. Unfortunately, what I know about it in Tunisia, we don't have any study that has been made about it, although it is a very, very important topic. What I know about it comes from interviews I have done with farmers and also people living in Sigdoud, the village near Gafsa in the southwest Tunisia, where is to be implemented the NG Nareva solar project. So people of Sigdoud suffer from extreme drought. They have no more water resources. The water is brought from the nearest city, Gafsa, every day through cisterns. And so the people there link it directly to what is going on in another area not very far away called Gbilli, whereas there is an intensive date production, and the water that it used in Gbilli often comes from solar pumping, which is not at all regulated in Tunisia. And I have actually, so this is a major, major problem because it is exploiting the groundwater resourcing in a very anarchic way. And I've heard of some initiatives led by Indian farmers that are very interesting on this point because they use solar pumping, but there is a legal frame and it has turned in a very positive experience. So they have used the solar energy to pump the water. What was left from this energy could have has been sold to the state, and actually it is a very virtuous and positive circle. Yeah, and concerning democratic experiences and alternatives to energy production, renewable energy production, there has been some experiments in France, for example, and in South Africa of people putting their means together and accessing credit lines in order to build their own sustainable energy projects. So these are very small and local projects, but I will let Ilyes maybe talk about it because he knows more about the topic. But so there has been some local experiments on a very small scale.
سأتطرق أولا لإشكالية
Regarding land grabbing, I can give you an example. There is a project prepared by the state, and there was a technical advice given by the agency, the technical cooperation agency. So there's a problem related to land grabbing. And the first problem is related to real estate. The state organized a committee and This committee tried to find legal gaps and loopholes in order to legalize certain projects. This commission aims at finding legal loopholes to steal some lands, to grab some lands. So what we did is we called the councils related to managing or in charge of managing some tribal lands, the lands owned by tribes. We have law number 64 that allows tribes and fiqhs or some clans, if you could say so, to have the authority to manage some lands. And we have been told that there have been many land grabbing examples in the region. Another thing, the resistance, unionist resistance, trade unions, syndicates have been working with many partners in this field. In our countries, we've been facing many economic crises, and I know that trade unions and syndicates might have certain temporary demands instead of working on longer term projects. But anyway, we've worked with our partners, with syndicates working on the energy level. I have participated with the citizen syndicates, trade unions, the labor unions, and we developed a program in order to have a sustainable future for energy. And even in Glasgow, in the COP26, this was taken into account, and we have talked about the importance of raising awareness among people about energy. We should have the energy as a public service. We should get rid of the different problems. What are the alternatives? Can we say, for example, that the energy or electricity company can present an alternative? I think that the alternative should come from citizens. It's not about copying and pasting experiences to our country. It's about being inspired perhaps by some successful cooperative initiatives. So a group of people, like in Warsaw, for example, can a sort of a cooperative. They can produce energy and even sell the excessive amount of energy remaining to the state. So this eventually helps them gain or at least gain some money or get some reward, if you could say so, in return of giving away their lands. The socio-economic forum in Lebanon, in Tunisia as well, has worked with many cooperatives. There are many similar examples of cooperations in this field. There are, for example, projects that are being implemented in certain regions that aren't benefiting the local communities because of the arbitrary exploitation. In certain cases, even the public projects that have been implemented had a certain capitalist hat. This is why Burj Saleh, for example, community members and other communities should follow the good lessons from other countries and other communities. One more important thing, we always talk about exploiting renewable energy, and here we should ask, what is the GIZ doing? GIZ doing, for example. We know, for example, that the Germans are implementing projects in some of our communities. Some have developed projects in the automobile industries, and others are investing in wind power. So no matter what these projects are, we should be able to rely on our resources. We should be able to bridge the gaps in our balance of payment. We should be able to develop policies away from political polarizations or interest-related polarizations. The majority of projects are implemented by UNDP, by GIZ, or by other entities that are linked to the world capitalist movements.
We closed this conversation on a clear discussion on our ability to produce renewable energy and to actually produce the energy, not only the energy, but like the technology ourselves. So I would like to thank all of our panelists, and I would like to inform the audience on Zoom and Facebook that we will be sharing the slides. For those of the panelists who would like to share their slides, we will be sharing them. For those who would like to keep them from themselves, please let us know. And I was very happy to host this conversation. It was a very fulfilling conversation. Thanks to everyone who attended, and have a happy lunch.
شكر خاص للمترجمين في الجلسة دي.
And thank you, an endless thank you to the interpreters who have had a very hard time. Thanks.